Good morning, Miss Jones. I'm David White, our personnel manager.
Good morning.
Please take a seat.
Thank you.
Well, did you manage to find us easily enough?
Oh, no problem. But the traffic was terrible. I was terrified I'd be late.
Well, you made it on time, so no problem. How did you get here?
I took the bus, but even the bus lane was blocked.
I know the problem. Well, let's start with a few personal details to make sure everything on the printout of your application form is correct. Our computers have been doing funny things lately. Full name, Penny Ann Jones.
Yes, that's correct.
British citizen, date of birth, January the 3rd, 1980.
That's right.
And your address, 28 Green Lane, Oxford.
Actually, no, that's my old address. I was living there when I applied, but now I've moved to flat 502, 56 Rose Gardens. But it's still in Oxford.
OK, I'll just change that. Good. And is your home phone the same?
Yes, 7984865.
And your email, jenny27@hotmail.com?
Yes, that's it.
And you have a first-class honours degree in public health management from Keele University?
Yes.
What made you choose this major, Miss Jones?
Well, both my parents are doctors, and I got my interest in health and things from them. But I wasn't sure that I wanted to be a doctor myself. At the same time, I wanted to be involved in the health field, and I thought public health management would be ideal. Also, I've always been interested in politics and the environment, so I figured this would allow me to satisfy various interests.
I can't disagree. Us workers in the county public health department are often faced with a health threat from pollution or unsafe working conditions. We try to do something about it, and most companies or government departments are very cooperative. But it's not unusual to find a company that isn't. They start threatening things like loss of jobs, and of course that's always a political hot potato, especially with unemployment running around 11% in the country. So, what do you think about such things, Miss Jones?
Well, I think the first thing is that some companies think meeting environmental standards is expensive, but so many companies find that they can reduce costs by adopting cleaner technologies, seeing waste as resources, that sort of thing. And as for dangerous or unhealthy working conditions, if they don't get fined, then sooner or later there will be a big lawsuit, which is always expensive, even if they win.
Good, I agree. Oh, how rude of me. Would you like a cup of tea, coffee or something?
A coffee would be lovely.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the Sunny Skies Nursery School. My name is Doris Matthews, and I'm the headmistress. First of all, I'll describe our philosophy of early education, along with our teaching principles. I'll try not to sound like a teacher giving a lecture. Then, we'll have a tour of the school, and finish with tea and sandwiches in the staff room, where you can meet our teachers and administrative staff. They will all be very happy to meet you and answer any questions you might have. First, as you know, we base our teaching, or should I say learning, because we try to help our children discover and learn for themselves, rather than simply try to teach them facts. We base our efforts on the principles discovered by that wonderful Italian educator and doctor, Maria Montessori. This means we believe learning best takes place in an atmosphere in which the children interact a lot and learn from each other. This encourages them to be lifelong learners and problem solvers. For decades, many studies have shown that children, and even us adults, learn through the senses. Our children learn by manipulating materials, toys, sand, blocks, almost anything, and interacting with others. They have fun as they learn, and these experiences help them to form, on their own, with of course a little bit of help from the teacher, abstract ideas. We try to cultivate the whole person, believing that the spiritual, emotional, physical, cognitive, and social interests and needs are all equally important and interdependent. We also do our best to foster respect for each other and the environment. We find that our school garden, where they learn the magic of life, the need to recycle organic resources. How sad that so many people around the world think their kitchen waste is just that, waste. And maintain healthy soil for growing our food. But you'll see for yourselves. You'll be able to taste some of our home-grown tomatoes and things when we have a snack in the staff room. Some of our children's most magical moments have been when they see the seeds they planted sprouting up through the soil. Well, that's enough about our philosophy and method of education. I'm sure we'll enjoy chatting about it some more when we meet the staff. Now I'd like to show you around. It's a lovely day, so we'll start with the vegetable garden. I'm sure you've all guessed that we are very proud of our garden. You can see it outside the balcony. It's on the south side of the school, so it gets lots of sun. On the left, the east side, you can see the classroom block. Actually, we don't see them as classrooms in the normal sense. They are more like activity and play centers. And on the opposite side, we have the dining hall and the kitchen. Behind us, across the courtyard, we have the offices and the staff room. So, out we go. So, here we are in our garden. We grow all the vegetables we need for the children's and the staff's lunches for the whole year. The greenhouse you see over there is a great help in the winter and spring. I can't begin to tell you how much the children love their garden. And they learn so much. Not just how to grow things, but also arithmetic, weights, and measures. They love seeing how heavy the biggest tomato or potato or whatever it is. They also love getting dirty, but doctors tell us that's good for the healthy development of strong immune systems. Have you read those reports about how kids who never come into contact with a bit of dirt or with animals are much more likely to suffer from asthma? It's fascinating, but don't worry, we make sure they have a good wash before they go home. So, shall we have a look at the classrooms now? We have small classes, usually no more than 10 children per class, but we also have a lot of activities in which the whole school joins in. Sports, running around the outside of the school to warm up on a winter's day, singing. We always enjoy a song or two when we have our daily morning assembly in the assembly hall. Okay, here we are in the first classroom. You see the 10 or so small foam rubber mattresses over there by the cupboard? And we have blankets inside the cupboard. They are for after lunch, when we like the children to have an hour's sleep. Then they have lots of energy until it's time to go home. Oh, I just saw Miss Robbins taking the sandwiches to the staff room. Let's go there now and meet the staff. They are always so excited to meet our children's parents.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Harry. Where's Jill? I really need her. She's the brainy one.
Me too, but she's always late.
I think that's her. I'd recognize her footsteps anywhere.
Good morning, boys. Sorry I'm a bit late. I was photocopying some things that you might find useful for reviewing for the exams. I know you missed those lectures. Been waiting long? The traffic is so heavy.
Nah, just got here.
Good. Okay, but I'm really busy, so why don't we start? I know you wanted these photocopies, but what else?
This is a bit embarrassing, Jill, but Bob and I are really worried about these exams. I haven't prepared for them and we only have 2 weeks. My parents will kill me if I don't pass.
Same here. The thing is, you always do so well in exams, and,
Well, we know you know a lot about studying and things, so we thought you might be able to give us a few tips.
A few tips? If you both spent more time with your books and went to classes, you wouldn't need any tips. You think the bar is more important.
yeah, well, but we'd be really grateful if you know.
We really need your help, Jill.
Okay, I know you two guys. The first thing you have to do is organize your time. You're both so disorganized, and you don't have your priorities right. Having fun is always more important.
I know. But I'm really going to do what you tell us, Jill. Got no choice.
Me too.
I can only make a few suggestions. Really simple ones. Basic stuff. Obvious. But it's obvious you two don't have a clue. Ready for Mummy's talk?
I guess so.
Yeah.
Organize your time. Set aside a time for 40 minutes for exercise every day, and stick to it. Is that too difficult?
I guess not.
And no going partying or to the pub every night, okay?
This is sounding difficult.
Okay, fail your exams, then tell your mom and dad.
No, we're listening, Jill.
Right. No parties or drinking for 3 weeks. Agree?
Yeah, guess so. What else?
As soon as I've gone, write down a timetable. Eating time, exercise time, sleeping time. We've only got 1 or 2 classes left before the exams, so most of the rest of the time you can spend reviewing, but you have to stick to it.
We will. But then what?
Don't try to learn or review everything in one go. And take a 5-minute break every hour. Get up and walk around. You should know all this.
I suppose I do, but I never actually did it.
Same here.
And one last thing. For 5 or 10 minutes every hour, are you going to review together?
Guess so.
For the last few minutes, tell each other what you've learned in the past 40 minutes. That really helps it stick in your memory.
Good afternoon. Members of the Green Forest Golf and Country Club, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Parker Education Research Company, it is my pleasure to present you with the results of our feasibility study and recommendations for the facilities of the new private school that you are considering having built in Green Forest. First, the green light, our feasibility study. It shows that building the school makes economic sense. It would be a good investment. May I briefly explain how we came to this conclusion, how we conducted our study? There are just over 7,500 households in Green Forest and a population of 31,000. If you look at the graph on the screen, you will see that the average annual income of these households last year was £83,000 a year, which is far above the national average of £41,000. We did a random survey of 10% of the 3,200 families with a household income of over $50,000 and found that they had an average of 0.33 children between the ages of 8 and 12, the age of local children who would be most likely to attend the school, which, if the project is approved, will open in 2 years' time. So this means there are about 1,000 children in Green Forest who will be of the right age, and with parents who could probably afford it, to attend the proposed new private school. After explaining the concept, we found that just over 1/3 of these parents are very enthusiastic about sending their children to the type of school that you have in mind. The rest were not sure or completely satisfied with the state schools. We did not do a survey in the 2 nearby towns, but seeing that they also have a high percentage of quite wealthy people, roughly the same demographics, and have no nearby top-class schools to which to send their children, we are confident that at least 50, probably near 100 pupils could be attracted from these towns as students when the school opens. This means there are at least 300 local students whose parents would be very keen on sending them to the proposed new school. This would be enough to make the school break even in the second year. As new classrooms and other facilities were added in the second and third years, especially 2 residences, one for male and one for female students from elsewhere in the country and overseas, then the economic prospects look even better. I mentioned facilities, and I know you have been discussing this a lot among yourselves. Our survey shows that there are several essential facilities that almost all the people we questioned would require before sending their children here. I will not list them in any order of importance. They are all seen to be very important. The first is a good language lab. Very few of the parents we spoke to are fluent in a foreign language and do not want their children to be the same. It seems most of them mention the word globalization and see the importance of foreign languages, and not just French and other European languages. Many of them mention Chinese. Another essential is good sports facilities, including an Olympic-size indoor swimming pool and a well-equipped gym. A lot of the parents were overweight. I guess they don't want their kids to get in the same way. 2 multiple-use pitches, one for rugby and soccer, the other for field hockey and athletics, would be required. Fortunately, the land for these would not be a problem, as the governors and members of this golf and country club have agreed that the golf practice range is far bigger than needed, and part of it could be used for these outdoor sports. In addition, the location is ideal, right next to the proposed site of the school itself. Another, and very obvious requirement, is that the school have a state-of-the-art computer study center. It would not have to be big enough to accommodate more than, say, 10% of the students at any one time, because virtually all of them have their own computers at home. But no computer games, unless they are educational, was a frequent response to the computer studies question. I know that several of you work for large computer companies, so maybe you could use your influence to keep costs down and quality high. A cafeteria? Interestingly enough, one thing some people mentioned, perhaps it's a bit early to worry about this, was that they would not want their children to have access to fast food. Other things, all of which are seen as essential, and that we have included in the budget, are a good-sized main hall, with a large stage for school drama productions, etc., and good facilities for music, pianos, everything for a school orchestra, all the things many of the parents didn't have when they were young.
Hello, the Gray residence.
Hello, you are Mrs. Gray?
Yes, who's calling?
I am Yuki Kitashima in Tokyo.
Oh, I'm so happy you called. The homestay officer at the college told me you would call in a day or 2.
Yes, I am very happy to speak with you, Mrs. Gray. I hope I am not calling at an inconvenient time.
No, it's perfect. I've just got back from taking the dogs for a walk and put the kettle on for a cup of tea. What time is it where you are, Yuki?
It is 3 o'clock in the morning, Mrs. Gray.
Oh dear, you waited up all this time to call me?
It is 7 p.m. in London, I think.
Exactly.
My English teacher told me this is a good time to call English people. They have just had their dinner and then watch television or go to the pub.
Ha ha. Well, Fred, that's my husband. He's working a bit late tonight. So we'll go out for dinner when he gets back, probably in an hour or so. Now you've called, we'll have to have Japanese food to celebrate.
Oh, you are too kind, Mrs. Gray. So I should go out for fish and chips, yes?
So lovely. Us eating sushi in London and you eating fish and chips in Tokyo. I don't know what Richard and Anne will have.
Richard and Anne?
Oh, how silly of me. Yes, They are our two children. Richard is 17 and Anne is 19, just about your age.
Yes, I am just 20, Mrs. Gray.
I know they are both so looking forward to seeing you. They have lots of friends. John's in his last year at high school, and Anne has just started university near here.
What is Anne studying, Mrs. Gray?
Well, you wouldn't believe this. Japanese language and culture. In fact, that's one reason we thought it would be nice to have another homestay student from Japan. She can't wait to meet you, and nor can Richard. I'm sure you will all get on famously together. Your room is all ready.
Thank you, Mrs. Gray.
Oh, Yuki, have you booked your flight yet?
All booked.
Great. When can we expect you? Let me get a pen. We'll all meet you at the airport.
Thank you so much. I arrive at Heathrow Airport next Wednesday, the 15th at 10:30 a.m.
Your flight, Yuki?
Japan Airlines JA2674. I will go to the travel agent this morning to pick up my ticket. Then I will confirm details by email. Lots of luggage, Mrs. Gray.
No problem, Yuki. We'll write a big sign so you can recognize us. We are sure you will feel at home with us.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Gray.
Good morning. I'm the head visa officer here. Welcome to our monthly talk on applying for British visa. We used to give everybody photocopies of the different forms you have to fill in, but found that that was rather expensive. So to save money and paper, we now use slides that you can see on the screen behind me. By the way, this and the other forms you will see are the same forms that you will see if you go online to UK Visas, that's one word, .gov.uk. They are very similar to the hard copy you will find in our offices. The first question, do you need a visa to enter the UK? If you are not a British citizen or a citizen of one of the European Economic Area countries, you may need an entry clearance before you travel to the UK. Entry clearance means the application process for people who need a visa to travel to the United Kingdom and for those who don't need a visa for a short stay. How short depends on their nationality, but who intend a longer stay or to settle in the UK. People from certain countries, known as visa nationals, the first type I mentioned, need an entry clearance to enter the UK for any reason. Those from other countries need only one for certain reasons. For example, to live as the wife or husband of a British citizen. The entry clearance certificate, that we all call a visa, is placed in your passport or travel document. The job of an entry clearance officer at a British embassy or consulate or other mission overseas is to decide if you qualify for entry before you travel to the United Kingdom. These officers stick to very strict rules and procedures. If you need to find out more, then you can click on the Immigration Rules and Diplomatic Service Procedures Entry Clearance. If you have a valid UK visa, you will not normally be refused entry to the UK on arrival, unless your circumstances have changed, you gave false information, or you did not tell the entry clearance officer important facts when you applied for your visa. So let's assume that you have your entry visa, which, by the way, is only valid up to a certain date. At your UK port of arrival, the visa tells the immigration officer there the purpose of your travel, how long you can stay in the UK, and the latest date that you can enter the UK. Normally, you may enter and leave the UK as many times as you like during the validity of your visa. Okay, let's go back to the question. Do you need a visa? If you look on the screen now, you will see a picture of the first page of the form. Do I need a UK visa? we find that a few people spend hours filling out visa application forms, only to discover that they don't need a visa. You can use this questionnaire to find out if you need a visa or entry clearance to enter or transit through the UK. Please note that the rules can change sometimes, so it's a good idea to visit the news page and the Visa and DATV Nationals page. You can see that this is recommended on the form. Going down the form, we see the purpose of visit section, au pair, business, doctor, medical treatment, to see one's fiancé, returning resident, student for more than 6 months, and dozens more. I must stress again that it is very important that you answer all the questions truthfully and accurately. Even an accidental mistake can ruin your chances of getting a visa, possibly forever. Next, we have country of nationality. Please note that this refers to the passport you hold, or that you will hold, and not to where you are living or staying now. That is the next question, current location, which is quite simple. So as well helping you find out if you need a visa, you can also find out where you should make your application, as well as which application form you need to fill in, and which guidance note you should read. Now, some of you here I know wish to sponsor a visitor to the UK, and others of you have a sponsor for your visit. The basic rules applying to a sponsored visitor are 1. He or she wishes to stay in the UK as a visitor for no more than 6 months. 2. He or she intends to leave the United Kingdom on completion of his or her visit. And 3. He or she has enough money to live without working and without needing help from public funds, such as income support or housing benefit.
Good morning, madam, sir. My name is Bob Smith. I'm doing a survey of people's shopping preferences and how it relates to their thoughts about the environment. I'd be very grateful if you could spare a few minutes of your time.
The environment, you say? Well, I think it's very important. It's terrible what's happening. You can't pick up a newspaper without reading about melting ice caps and tigers going extinct. I'm very worried about my grandchildren's future.
Oh, don't carry on, dear. Are we going to help this gentleman, or do you have to get to your meeting?
It's the environment. Of course we're going to help him. My meeting can wait.
Looks like we can spare you a few minutes. By the way, what's your name again, Bob?
Right, Bob.
I'm John, and this is Joan.
Great. Good to meet you.
You don't mind me asking who you are doing this for and what the purpose is? I don't want to go out giving information that will help those big corporations sell more junk food to children.
Don't worry, it's the opposite. I work for the Green Market Research Company based in West London. We specialize in helping environmentally responsible companies tell consumers why they should buy their products, rather than products that have a more damaging effect on the environment.
Well, that's a good thing. All those poisons the big companies are putting in our food and air. Have you read about the polar bears and seals in the Arctic having very high levels of PCBs, pesticides, and lots of other terrible things in them? And there are no factories where they live.
It's okay, dear. Why don't we see what the gentleman wants to know?
Yes, well, thank you, sir. Look, why don't we sit down at that table? Can I get you a coffee, tea, or something?
Oh, I'd love a cup of tea. My husband always has black coffee.
Sure. Anyway, can I begin by asking you what you believe is the most serious environmental problem humans are facing nowadays?
Well, there are so many. But since I retired, I've been doing a lot of reading about this. So much information on the internet. I think it's climate change, global warming.
Global warming. And John, may I call you John?
Please do.
And does this make any difference to your shopping decisions?
It certainly does. For example, We bought a new fridge a week ago. We're both pensioners, so we're a bit careful about how we spend our money. We had already decided we didn't need such a big fridge. We'd had the old one since the kids left home over 20 years, but we also decided to look for the most energy-efficient fridge.
Yes, it cost 20 pounds more than the second most efficient one, but John worked out we would soon save more on our electricity bill.
So what was the main reason you chose the most expensive one? Saving money or saving energy to reduce the effect on global warming?
Oh, global warming, certainly. The money savings were secondary.
And did the salesman where you bought it mention global warming before you did that?
Oh, no. I think he thought we were a bit strange, but he was too polite to show it. But he did point out the lower electricity bills.
And you, Joan, what do you think is the most serious environmental problem?
Well, John and I both agree that it is global warming.
What about the second most serious?
Oh, it must be all those pesticides and other chemicals. Do you know that we are all walking around with hundreds of chemicals inside us that Mother Nature never intended to be there? John, what was that name they used? P.O. something.
Persistent organic pollutants, dear. POPs.
That's it. POPs. Well, they're so harmful. All that cancer. It's terrible.
I agree. And what difference, if any, does this make to your shopping?
Well, we love gardening, so we grow most of our own vegetables now. But when we buy food, we always go to the health food store and buy organic fruits and vegetables, and our children do the same now.
It costs a bit more, but it's getting cheaper as more and more people insist on it. And the farmers are happy not to work with all those pesticides and herbicides, so we try to do our bit for the planet.
That's great. Okay, let's drink our tea and coffee and then we'll carry on.
Good morning, everybody. As most of you know, I'm Professor Rosemary Parkinson, and as I'm sure you all know, else you wouldn't be here, I'm going to give a talk on good study habits and developing a study plan. First of all, why do I think such a talk will be helpful to you? After all, you are all first-year university students, although I see some familiar faces here. So I guess some of you have been at our university for much more than a week or so. But the point is, you've all been students for 12 years or more, so surely you know all about studying. Well, it seems rather strange, but all of us spend years at school learning maths, physics, chemistry, history, languages, all sorts of things. But how many of us have ever been to a class where they try to teach us how to learn, how to study, in the most efficient and enjoyable way? I say enjoyable because learning things we don't enjoy learning, that we think we have no interest in, is such a bore. But in fact, many studies show that most of us enjoy studying most things if we do it right, if we study properly in an active way that constantly uses our creativity, that makes us excited about what is coming next. That gives us the satisfaction of having solved a problem. How many of you know people who hate studying but love doing crosswords or playing computer games that challenge their minds and their reflexes? Lots of you, I'm sure. Well, one objective is to learn to enjoy studying in the same way we enjoy those crosswords and computer games. Okay, we'll come back to that later. Now, I want to discuss a few basics. 1. Regular exercise. Countless studies show that regular physical exercise, say 40 minutes or so, 5 days a week of jogging, fast walking, weight training, tennis, whatever you enjoy, puts you in a more positive frame of mind and also increases creativity and memory for hours after the exercise. Other important things are to eat good, healthy food, get enough sleep, and try not to spend too much time and money in the student bar. There's nothing worse than trying to learn something or solve a problem than when you have a hangover. So, as the Romans used to say, mens sana in corpore sano, a healthy mind in a healthy body. Right, now we're all going to keep fit and healthy. What about the studying? First, you must work out the times that you will use for study. When I say study, I mean all the schoolwork, writing essays, reading, etc., that you do out of class. Be realistic. Don't plan to spend 60 hours a week on it. It's too much for most of us. Set aside 1 or 2 blocks of time, each of, say, 2 or 2.5 hours a day, that are your study time. As I say, be realistic. Don't set yourself such an ambitious goal that you will never stick to it. And it's also a good idea to leave 1 day a week, Sunday perhaps, completely free, so you can relax, and occasionally do some schoolwork at those times when it builds up a bit. That's time settled. Now for place. We are creatures of habit. We do things better when we do them in places that we associate with a particular activity, in this case, studying. So it's best to try and set aside a quiet place, perhaps your bedroom, a study if you have one, which is where you study. When the weather is nice, it could be outdoors. Nothing is nicer than reading and thinking about that novel you have to read for English Literature 101 on a quiet, grassy bank by a stream on a sunny day. And we mustn't forget the library. Most of us find that studying, surrounded by the learning of centuries, is inspiring, as though studying is the only proper thing to do in a library. Okay, time, place, what next? It is questions. Before you set out to read something, always ask yourself, what questions do I want and expect to be answered in this chapter or this paper? Don't simply start reading and hoping to absorb information like a sponge. Give the information somewhere to go, like little hooks in your brain to hang it on. These hooks are the questions you've thought of. And don't try to do too much at a time. After, say, 40 or 50 minutes, put the book down and tell yourself what you've learnt, what questions have been answered, what it means. Spend a few minutes on this and take a short walk while you're doing it.
And it's a bright sunny morning here at Portsmouth University Radio, the radio station that brings you all the news and lots of the fun non-news from our wonderful campus and the city we live in. I'm your host, Mike, and with me is
Rita. Hi, guys.
So, Rita, what's on the menu this morning?
As usual, Mike, we'll start off with the most important, most exciting and interesting news for all those thousands of our highly intellectual, very serious listeners. Sports!
Right, good news from the women's soccer team last night, I hear.
Sure is. They thrashed Southampton by, would you believe it, not 4, not 5, but 6 goals to 0. Nothing, 0. So the team's looking good for the Southern England University League that starts this Saturday.
Did you see the game, Rita? I wanted to, but was stuck in the lab playing with rats.
See the game? Against our closest rivals? Do you think I'd have missed it? Great game.
So, who scored?
No surprises here. Molly and Mbeka scored the first 3, all in the first half. Susie Smith, last year's top scorer, hit the net 5 minutes into the second half, followed 2 minutes later by Joan Michael. Then Molly finished off the massacre just before the final whistle.
Fantastic players, great team. All our listeners know Susie Smith, of course, the blonde dynamite, and Joan Mitchell from last year. But Molly is new on campus, a first-year postgraduate medical student, all the way from Ghana, where she played for the national team. Top scorer. An amazing 25 goals in international matches last season. African Woman Player of the Year.
Yeah, she's fantastic. She came very close to scoring more, but Southampton hemmed her in really tightly after they saw what she can do.
I heard she could turn professional tomorrow if she wanted to, but prefers to enjoy the game as an amateur and study to become a doctor.
That's true. Okay, and how about the men's soccer team, Mike?
Do I have to speak about this, Rita? A disaster. Played away at Bristol. I won't be surprised if some of them are too embarrassed to come back. Lost 6-2, and Bristol had their best two players watching from the sidelines because of injury. Let's change the subject.
Good idea. No other sporting news today, but lots coming up this weekend. Now to the bad news from the Students' Union.
Really bad news. Prices in the cafeteria and bar are going up by an average of 10% as from Monday. 75p for a cup of coffee. £4 for a pint of bitter. My favourite beer.
So, complain. There's a demonstration planned for outside the Students' Union building at noon tomorrow. See you there, and you can phone us now, 8759 765, to tell us what you think.
Good morning, fellow members of the board, staff members, and our dear stockholders. Welcome to our 6th annual general meeting. It is my pleasure to give you an overview of how the Orange Computer Company has done in the past year. When I have finished, we will be very happy to answer any questions you might have. Most of what I have to say is very encouraging, but to get it over with, I'll start with the bad news. Actually, it's not too bad. This time, a year ago, we told you that we were about to launch our first mobile phone line, cell phone for our American friends. After a major promotion, our 4 mobile phones hit the market exactly 1 week later. Given our excellent company reputation, very promising results from our market research, and what we thought were attractive winning features at very competitive prices, our competitors were ready and waiting, with new models at prices that we had to match. So match them we did, but given the difficulty of breaking into this market, sales have been disappointing both in Europe and especially in North America. Given the massive growth of China's mobile phone production in recent years, and our lack of experience in that part of the world, we did not market the phones in Asia. So our mobile phone subsidiary is still limping along, but sales are slowly growing. We believe the long battery life and reliability are beginning to have a larger impact on consumers. So we have planned a new promotion and marketing campaign stressing these 2 strengths. Our research also shows that after only a few weeks, most purchasers of the fanciest, most expensive mobile phones end up only using the basic functions: phone calls, messages, and chatting. So we will be appealing to the more conservative consumers, those who look for reliability rather than those who feel they need to always have the very latest and most complicated models. We are confident that we will soon build a strong position in this target market. Now for the good news. As you can see in the annual report, total group income from sales increased to just over 1.83 billion euros, a very healthy 9.5%, and net profit after taxes increased to 126 million euros, or 18%. So you can look forward to a significant rise in share dividends and an even bigger increase in the value of your stock holdings in Orange Computers. Let me briefly describe the main reasons for our even better than expected growth and profits this past year. One is the fruits of our merger 4 years ago with Ribbon Optical, Europe's largest camera and CCD maker. Our decision to get into the high-end digital and professional camera market has proven to be the right one. We have been particularly successful in the medical imaging field. Starting from nothing 3 years ago, our equipment is now being used by 12% of Europe's hospitals, and we have already, after just 18 months, made a promising entry into the North American market. In fact, just yesterday, we signed a $1.2 million contract with one of America's best-known medical schools. Another major reason for a very profitable year was the increased outsourcing of our programming to India and China. This has resulted in very significant cost reductions on our software side. And I am happy to tell you that we managed to increase the proportion of the programming we outsource without laying off any of our European programming staff, who we keep for those software and platform projects that we wish to keep most closely to ourselves. Efforts to increase energy efficiency have also reduced costs. We are also pleased that our decision, explained to you at our meeting a year ago, to stick to our core business and not to enter such areas as games, PlayStations, music, MP3, and the like, mobile phones were the one exception, is, in our opinion, proving correct. The competition is very fierce in these fields, with minimum returns, and in the case of the music side, extremely costly in legal fees.
Hi, Mr. Hayes. It's so great to see you again.
Mary, one of my most favourite students. So, how are you?
Well, to be honest, Mr. Hayes, not so good. That's why I wanted to see you. It's about university. So different from high school.
Oh dear. Well, why don't we sit down over there and you can tell me all about it? Let's see if I can be of any help to you.
Oh dear, I feel so stupid now. I shouldn't have bothered you.
Don't be silly, Mary. We all need someone to speak to sometimes. And since your mother and father are in New Zealand, you probably feel a bit lost now and then. But before you say anything else, why don't you tell me all the things that you like about your new life at university?
Gee, I don't know. I guess I like the city. Canterbury Cathedral is one of my favorite places. I often go there just to sit and think. Or just sit.
Oh, I can quite understand that. And you've got the sea. I love the sea. And you are never more than a short cycle ride from the lovely Kent countryside. And how are your teachers?
Oh, the profs are great. Not as good as you, but really interesting and always ready to explain things after class. But I don't know. They're really good. But I just can't seem to feel enthusiastic about studying anymore.
Mary? Not a keen student anymore? My dear, that's so hard to believe. You were always so energetic and interested in all your studies, except German, if I remember correctly. But you still did very well in it. And you always wanted to major in biology, which is what you're doing now. Do you still enjoy biology?
I don't know. I suppose so. But I kind of have to force myself to go to lectures and stuff. It all seems like a waste of time. Pointless.
Mary, I think I know you quite well. You are obviously not feeling yourself. Are you feeling sad or worried about something?
Not really sad, and I don't think I'm worried about anything in particular. It's just that nothing seems worth bothering with.
Have you spoken with your mum or dad lately?
Not since Easter. I send them emails, but they hardly ever reply, and they are never in when I try to phone them, always out filming.
Yes, Mary. That is sometimes the problem with very successful parents. They get so wrapped up in their work that they neglect their kids. Not intentional, but it happens.
I guess, but at least I could speak to them sometimes when they were here in London. But now, well, I feel really alone at Canterbury.
Have you made any friends there, Mary? You were always such a popular person here. It seemed you were in every club and sports team. President of the chess club. Have you joined any university clubs?
Not really. Suppose I should. I'll check out the debating society once I get back.
That's a good idea. Let me know how you get on.
Good evening. Good to see so many people here to learn about the fascinating civilization of the Aztecs. By the way, is the microphone working? You can hear okay at the back? Good. Let's go back to 1519 AD. Anyone know what happened in that year? Right. Hernan Cortes landed on that part of Central America that is today known as Mexico. He expected to find gold, and he did. What he did not expect to find, however, was the great Aztec civilization. Aztec legend said they originated in the plains of northwestern Mexico and slowly migrated southward. When they arrived at Lake Texcoco in 1325, they founded their great capital, Tenochtitlan, on the site of what is now Mexico City. The Aztecs developed a complex society and governmental structure, at the head of which was the emperor. They made many scientific advances, especially in the areas of astronomy and medicine. They also had a complicated religion, and interest in the arts, agriculture, and social conditions occupied much of their time. Let's talk about their remarkable achievements in some of these areas. You cannot do much if you don't have food to eat, so let's first take a look at their farming practices. The land that the Aztecs farmed was not fertile enough to grow enough food to support the growing population, so they were forced to invent methods to increase productivity, including irrigation, fertilizer, and even building terraces on hills to protect soil from running off, like we see today in China, the Philippines, and many other parts of the world. But one thing we don't see was their very original idea of chinapas, spelt C-H-I-N-A-P-A-S. Chinapas were floating gardens built on swamps. Actually, they were quite simple to make. First, canals were dug through the marshes and swamps. Then, mud from the canals was placed on mats woven from weeds and straw. These mats were quite big, maybe 5 or 6 meters long and 2 across. Trees were then planted in the bed of the swamp at the corners of each mat. The trees took root, and the chinapas were held firmly in place. The Aztecs used these floating gardens to plant their maize, corn, and also vegetables like beans, chili peppers, avocados, squash, and tomatoes. The Aztecs were very advanced in some ways, but they didn't use animals or plows to help them work the land. In fact, they didn't even have the wheel. No problem. The soil on the chinapas was soft enough that pointed sticks were all they needed to plant crops on them. But the Aztecs were much more than imaginative gardeners. They made great advances in the sciences, especially astronomy. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Aztecs' calendar stone. It took them 52 years, from 1427 to 1479, to build the calendar stone. It was huge, a massive piece of rock 3 feet thick, 12 feet in diameter, and weighing about 24 tons, on which they carved pictographs for the days and months of the Aztec calendar. This showed just how advanced the Aztecs were in the science of astronomy. It makes me think of the clean air they enjoyed in those days, when they could see all the stars shining so brightly in the night sky. They would have had a big problem doing this in most parts of the world nowadays. But back to the calendar stone. It had 18 months, each of 20 days, namely 360 days made 1 year. But they had long before worked out that there are 365 days in a year. So they added 5 days, which they called the nemantemi, or sacrificial days, to get 365. Remember, this was 103 years before the Gregorian calendar that we use today. Very sophisticated, those Aztec astronomers. And they were not only clever astronomers. The Aztecs made great advances in medicine. At the time, many Europeans looked down on the herbal medicine of the Aztecs as a heathen practice, just like they used to look down on traditional Chinese or African medicine. But in fact, Aztec doctors could do more than even the best doctors in Europe. Their medicine was primarily based on spiritual healing and herbal healing. Spiritual, because they believed many illnesses were caused by such things as an angry god or bad birth signs. So their first step in treating an illness was always prayer and sometimes animal sacrifice. But they also used herbal medicine and concentrated much of their medical science on finding out what herbs could do, just like the ancient Chinese doctors. So, over generations, the Aztecs accumulated a vast knowledge of the herbs in the world around them and the medicinal properties of each one. One difference with traditional Chinese medicine is that the Aztecs concentrated more on curing the symptoms of a disease than getting at the cause of the disease. They felt that if a god or goddess wished to make them ill, then they could do nothing about the root cause, namely a god. If the medicine worked, it meant that the gods approved of the patient getting well again.
Who is it?
It's me, Sally.
The door's open. Hi.
Hi, so have you decided where to go for your big holiday?
Finally, I narrowed it down to Southeast Asia or India and Pakistan and decided on Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia. Wow, sounds romantic. Decided when you'll leave?
I have to be back in time for the new term, so I want to leave by July 1st.
That's a long trip. 3 months nearly. Don't you think it's too long?
No, I want to do research on recycling while I'm there for my environmental studies course next year. So I've got tons of things to do. I don't know where to start.
First things first. Passport, air ticket, and money. How much money are you taking? I hear it's not cheap like it used to be.
The passport's okay for another 2 years. I'll go to the travel agent tomorrow, and I reckon £3,000 should be plenty. I'm glad I kept doing that horrible waitress job this past 3 years.
1,000 a month. Sounds plenty. Including airfare?
No, Dad's got a frequent flyer award, so I should be able to get to Singapore and back for nothing.
Yeah, but you have to be careful. Normally those free ticket things mean you can only fly when there are empty seats. Don't want you to get stuck there until all the rich Asian students have flown back here after seeing their families.
I'll manage, but I'll see what the travel agent has to say. Gosh, July 1st. That's only a bit over 3 weeks.
Inoculations. All sorts of nasty diseases in those tropical places. Have you checked out the health requirements?
Didn't think of it. How do I start?
I think there's a Ministry of Health webpage that tells you what injections and pills you need before you go to different countries. Yellow fever, malaria, that sort of stuff. How many countries do you plan on visiting?
As many as I can. Singapore, Malaysia, I'd like to get to Sabah and Sarawak in East Malaysia if I can. Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and Indonesia for sure.
That's pretty ambitious. How do you plan to get around?
As cheap as I can. Don't fancy flying much. Maybe I can get a boat from Singapore to Borneo.
You didn't mention Borneo.
Oh, that's the big island where Sabah and Sarawak are. Most of it belongs to Indonesia.
Oh, I know. And Brunei, right? That little place with tons of oil.
Right.
Have you still got your camera?
Yeah, and Dave has promised me a digital video camera for my birthday.
But your birthday isn't until late July.
An early birthday present. That's what brothers are for.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Richard Smethers from International Students Consulting. And welcome to today's talk on what you need to know and think about prior to going to study in the UK. Probably the biggest question is that of housing. It can be very expensive, especially in London. And the halls of residence in most universities are certainly not cheap. That's what you pay for convenience. Probably the best thing for most of you, I believe it's the first time any of you have studied in the UK, is to try to find a vacancy in a coop house with other students. If you are keen to make maximum progress with your English, I would suggest that you try to find accommodation with at least one native speaker. So many foreign students end up living only with people from their own country, and I've actually known cases where their English is worse after 3 years than when they arrived. One advantage of living with British students is that they'll probably have experience of dealing with landlords, looking after the bills, and other things that might be done quite differently in your home country. So how to find shared housing, any housing? Arrive early. It's best to try and be in the town or city where you'll be studying at least a week before the start of term. If you leave it too late, you'll be competing with thousands of other students all looking for a place to live. And one of your first stops should be the housing office. They have a database of all types of off-campus accommodation, and the early bird catches the worm, as they say. You'll probably meet other students at there in the same boat you are. And chat with people. If you meet any that seem to be the type of people you could get along with, then you might well sort out your accommodation quite quickly with them. Now, I know that a few of you will be going with your sponsors. Sharing a house or a flat with other students is probably not what most of you would prefer. If you are trying to save money, a studio flat, which has a bedroom and living room combined, and a place to cook, is usually cheaper than a flat with a separate bedroom and a kitchen. But remember, you will probably need somewhere to study at home. Once you have found a place to live, there are a few things you should check out very carefully with the landlord or the estate agent. Quite a few estate agents look after the renting out of housing for one or several landlords. First, how are you going to pay the rent? By the way, I forgot to mention that you should open a bank account very soon after you arrive. You might want to open a savings account for the bulk of your money and keep some in a current account for paying the bills. The advantage of the former is that you get more interest on your deposit, but you usually can't write checks or arrange to pay such things as electricity, gas, telephone, and water bills, plus what you owe the landlord. These are normally paid on a monthly or quarterly basis with what are called direct debits and standing orders. The rent, of course, is usually paid monthly, and most landlords want a deposit of 1 or 2 months' rent to pay for any damage you might do. Accidents happen, and it's sad but true that there are thieves everywhere. Make sure you have good locks on your doors and windows, and insist that the landlord or estate agent changes them if they are not up to scratch. You should take out insurance for major items such as personal computers. If you have a car, then insurance is required by law. And if you think you may want to get a car, make sure you take your current driving license with you, because it may help you get cheaper car insurance. But the most important type of insurance you should take out is medical insurance. Falling off your bike and breaking your arm can be a very costly business if you are not protected by insurance. Unlike the Student Union Advisory Service in your university, I am not allowed to offer you the best advice on what insurance company to use. Now, what about working? If you have a student visa for longer than 6 months, you can work for up to 20 hours per week during term time or 40 hours per week otherwise without applying for permission from the Home Office. And if you have a UK visa based on a relationship to someone with a long-term visa in the UK, you will normally be free to take up any sort of employment in the UK.
Hello everybody, and welcome once again to How to Study program on the Oxford TV Educational Channel. As usual, we are your hosts, Rick and
Rita. Okay, Rick, what's today's topic?
Note-taking.
Right, note-taking. It's one of those things most of us students do, but has anyone ever told you how to do it so it can be the greatest help to you? If you had teachers like mine all of your life, probably not.
Same here. Rita and I thought of this topic a few weeks ago, did some research, and found that most students don't take or use notes in the best way.
Of course, different things work better for different people, but we did manage to come up with some useful basic principles.
But first, how do we know it helps? How do we know it isn't better to listen carefully to everything the lecturer says, rather than scribble away taking notes?
Well, we found that research on note-taking has been going on since this guy, Professor C.C. Crawford, began his studies in the 1920s.
But we don't have time to tell you all about the different studies that have been done. The important thing is that most researchers agree that taking notes is better than not taking notes, and that reviewing notes is the key to their usefulness.
Both are really important. For example, in 1970, Professor Howe concluded that students were 7 times more likely to recall information 1 week after it was presented if the information had been recorded in their notes. He argued that the note-writing activity per se makes a contribution to later retention. But another important thing is that you shouldn't take notes like a human tape recorder. Listen to this, and I quote, "There is growing evidence that note-taking combined with critical thinking facilitates retention and applications of the information."
In fact, in 1979, 2 researchers found that students who took notes verbatim scored lower on comprehension tests than those who processed information at a high level, which is inhibited by taking notes this way. Similarly, in 1985, another researcher found that the most successful students thought about the relationships between the facts the lecturer told them, and the better organization of their notes reflected this process.
And putting information in different geometric figures, squares, triangles, rings, etc., like in computer programming, to stand for different functions and alternatives, improves this reorganization. Okay, now for some practical basics. You start, Rick.
1. Be prepared. Have your notebook open and pen in hand when class begins.
2. Listen for what the teacher emphasizes with words like to summarize. The main point is. And if something is written on the board, you should probably write it down.
And if something is repeated, it's probably important.
Don't try to write down every word, just the main ideas, content, and information.
And develop your own way of abbreviating words.
Go over your notes as soon as possible after class.
Underline or highlight main ideas, concepts, and information.
And last thing, reorganizing notes while reviewing leads to higher test scores.
afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our hospital's recreational therapy department. I'm Dr. Gillian Roberts, and I'm the department head. You all have children who have some form of disability, and your family physicians have recommended that they come here for treatment. Many people don't know very much about recreational therapy. It sounds rather like playing to get better. Well, in a way it is. But it's much more than this. So today I'll give you an overview of the basic principles and some common activities of this form of therapy. Please don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have any questions. Let me start by painting a picture in your minds. Imagine a young child with a disability and an adult splashing around, playing and laughing in a swimming pool. For the child, this happy scene is very different from the daily struggle of, for example, learning to walk without crutches. The adult is a recreational therapist. It's fun, but it's also work, and successful work as she sees the improvement in the child's balance, leg motion range, and lower body strength. Equally important, she sees that the child is slowly but surely gaining confidence. So this probably gives you an idea of what recreational therapy is all about. How about a definition? The American Therapeutic Recreation Association describes it as a healthcare and human service discipline that delivers treatment services designed to restore, remediate and/or rehabilitate functional capabilities for persons with injuries, chronic illnesses, and all types of disabling conditions. Well, that's quite a mouthful, but you can see that it covers a wide range of conditions and patients. At this hospital, we used to specialise in children under 12, while older people went to St. James, very close to here. But we found that children can be encouraged by seeing adults doing similar things to what they're doing, and they also get very attached to their therapists. So now both hospitals treat both youngsters and adults, and we work very closely together, especially on research projects. Okay, who are the therapists? Well, most of them are certified therapeutic recreation specialists, usually simply called recreational therapists. They're certified through the National Council for Therapeutic Recreation Certification, which requires a bachelor's degree or higher, a formal internship, and passing a certification examination. To maintain their certification, they must also participate regularly in professional education activities. Recreational therapists work in a wide range of clinical service areas, but they play an especially important role in the rehabilitation of children with disabling conditions. Their work with children includes such activities as physical play, focused on restoration or maintenance of functioning, and the one-on-one bedside play with a single child or small group activity. By the way, it seems that so far I've been talking about physical problems. In fact, our work also includes trying to help with psychological problems. For example, educational play focused on understanding upcoming surgery, dramatic or expressive play focused upon coping with fear and anxiety, and family or sibling play to help overcome such things as excessive shyness, hostility, and other emotional problems. What makes recreational therapy different from other forms of therapy? As the name suggests, it's the use of recreational activities as the mode of treatment. The treatment goals that a recreational therapist may work towards are similar to the goals of other disciplines on the rehabilitation team, but the way of achieving those goals is different. Also, the recreational therapist has a holistic perspective that includes the patient's leisure, social, cognitive, and physical needs. This means that a recreational therapist may work with a child on one or more of the following functional areas. Physical functioning. Things like mobility, strength, and motor skills. Cognitive functioning, such as attention span, memory, and problem solving. Emotional functioning. Things like self-esteem, confidence, and coping skills. Social functioning. How to communicate and interact with others. Sadly, sometimes we also have to help patients learn to manage pain. Other areas include developmental play skills, leisure interests and abilities. Well, that sounds more like something to do with recreation than the other things I just mentioned. As you can imagine, with all those different things that might need to be worked on, a recreational therapist may use a wide range of techniques to meet the needs of each child. After completing a comprehensive assessment, the recreational therapist identifies appropriate treatment goals and decides on the methods to be used. These methods might include leisure skill building, adaptive sports, aquatic therapy. I mentioned splashing around in a pool at the beginning of my talk, therapeutic art, and animal-assisted therapy. This is increasingly popular. It's wonderful how a friendly dog can do more than all the doctors in the world for some disabled kids.